Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We are back here with the NGL podcast, and today I have a special guest. He is from Great Britain. He is a former British Army officer. He worked in the psychological warfare. He is a former rugby player, former offshore sailor. He's traveled around the world. He has his own podcast, his own YouTube channel. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome the one and only Tim Heale.
Hi, mate. Thanks for having me on your show.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, or I guess good evening for you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Can I just point out one thing?
Yes, sir.
I wasn't an officer. I work for a living.
Oh, okay. Well, my bad. My bad. My
I,
bad.
I ended up as a colour sergeant.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So,
Gotcha.
and there's quite a bit of difference. A colour sergeant comes from an infantry regiment, and what a colour sergeant does, he escorts the colours, and the colours is what blokes live and die for. They rally around the colours. So that was the job of an infantry colour sergeant. And then you get a staff sergeant
Mm-hmm.
who comes from a corps, and they don't really do a lot.
Oh, okay. I got you. I got you. Well, I apologize. I just
Apology accepted.
I wrote that down wrong, and
That's
I'm
all right. I'll
sorry.
let you off.
All right, good deal. Good deal. So you're obviously in Great Britain, right?
Yes,
Okay. Now, where exactly are you located in Great
I
Britain?
live. I live in England, and I live on the south coast of England. And if you look at the British Isles, if you look at England, you look right down the bottom, you'll see there's a big island called the Isle of Wight.
Okay.
And then you've got the Solent separates the Isle of Wight from the mainland. And if you look at the right hand end, you've got a place called Portsmouth, where we have a big naval base. And opposite Portsmouth Harbour, on the other side of the harbour, you've got Gosport. And that's where I live in Gosport, which is also a big military town because we've got, the whole area is um, a military or a naval area. So it's got a long history of the Navy being part of Portsmouth, Gosport, and then you come a little bit further into the Solent, and you've got Southampton,
Mm-hmm.
and Southampton is where the cruise ships come out of. Queen Mary, she comes out of there and she goes across to New York, and it's the only cruise liner. She's not a cruise ship; she's a cruise liner, and there's a big difference between a cruise ship and a cruise liner. Cruise
Do you
liner.
mind? Yeah, I was gonna say, you mind sharing the difference between them? Because I'll be honest, I didn't even know there was a difference.
Well, she's the only cruise liner in existence or operating today, and it's the shape of the hull. She's designed to go through Atlantic crossings, so she cuts through the waves rather than sort of bounces over the top of them. She's got a deeper hull, so um, with a cruise ship they tend to be sort of fairly flat bottoms and big superstructures, whereas a cruise liner is shaped to punch through the waves, which gives her the speed. So that's the difference.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's news to me. I guess they say you learn something new every day. I just learned something
Every
new.
day is a school day.
Yes, sir. That is right. So now, obviously, I was reading a little bit about you, and so you played rugby.
I
Is that
did.
correct?
I
Okay.
played rugby from my school days until I was 56.
56. Wow.
It was the
Wow.
last game I played.
Yeah.
Um,
Wow. Now, did because I'm not real familiar exactly how rugby works, but obviously you have teams, right?
yep,
And now, do they have like okay, like in American football, they you have like college football and then you have pro football. Is that the
yep,
same way with rugby?
yeah, kind of. It's a little. Yes, we've got. I mean, you start off and you play rugby at school. If you're lucky, like I was, my school they because it was a really big school. There was a couple of thousand kids in the school. We were able to choose what sports we played.
Mm.
I didn't like football. I never had soccer for you guys.
Yeah. I
I
knew what you
never,
meant.
I never did like soccer. I got put off soccer at a fairly early age. They made me play soccer in a junior school, which I guess is your elementary,
Yeah. Yes, sir.
and they stuck me in the goal, and somebody kicked the ball so hard it hit me straight in the mooey, straight in the face, and I thought, I thought that's not playing fair. Anyway, so I saved that, that from going in the net,
Yeah.
but I had a bloody nose from it, and that kind of put me off football at that time. And also at that time, we're talking sort of the late '60s, early '70s, and in England, soccer at that time, there was a lot of hooliganism. There was a lot of trouble at football matches. There was fights, and oh, it was a horrible game. So that put me off. Unfortunately, they played rugby at the school as well. So I picked up, and I just fell in love with rugby. It was so much more fun, um, running around tackling people. Um, so that got me hooked. And then I played for a local team as well, outside of school, and just to develop my skills. And when I went to senior school, we were playing it there as well. And when I joined the army, I got to play it in the army as well.
Wow.
And I played for a few teams over the years. And my last team was the old Caterhamians, the old Cats,
Okay.
and they played at a reasonable level.
Right.
Um, and that's where my rugby career went. And then I was never really top top draw. I mean, I couldn't have played it professionally or anything like that, and I
Right.
certainly couldn't play it professional nowadays. I mean, you've seen these guys; they built like brick outhouses.
Yeah.
I mean,
There's
they're
some big
solid.
dudes. Yeah.
It's,
There's
it's,
some big guys.
it's and they're quick.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So
I think rugby players are probably bigger than our NFL players. Your all's
they're
rugby
probably
players, they're some big dudes.
they're probably around about the same sort of size. Um, but the difference is it's the stamina levels.
Yeah. Oh
I mean,
yeah, for sure.
I played American football back in the back end of the '80s, and I played
Okay.
for a couple of teams back then in England. I played with a team called Milton Keynes Pioneers,
Hmm.
where I was living at the time, and I played outside linebacker or defensive end, and we played at sort of a national division level. So
Hmm.
we were one under the top tier, so we like the one tier down, and it was a high level, we were fairly high level in the country playing this game, and we were conference champions in 1988, which was a really tough season for us, but we won most of our games. And then the following year, I went and played with another team called the Chilton Cheetahs, and they were playing about two divisions down from us, and they were sort of a young team that was starting out, and I went to play for them. I had an absolute field day the first game I played for them. I had about I had about a dozen sacks.
There you go.
And I was double teamed pretty much the whole game, and they still couldn't stop me.
There you go,
I
man.
felt really sorry for them actually with the with the poor quarterback that I kept sacking.
Yeah, yeah.
And we won the game, by the way.
Quarterbacks they don't have the. I mean, they don't have the funnest job. That's for sure.
No,
Especially when they're getting sacked all game.
yeah, it's a bit
Ever,
like
I feel like everybody wants to be the quarterback until you're sitting there watching the quarterback get sacked every time he hikes the ball. Then it's like, yeah, well, maybe I don't want to be a quarterback either.
it's a bit like rugby. I mean, my position in rugby was scrum half, and he's the guy that puts the ball into the scrum. I
Hmm.
don't know what goes on in there, right?
Hmm.
So I put the ball in the scrum, and then I pop round the back and wait for it to pop out, and then it's mine.
Right.
So
So let me ask you this: what is the difference like what are some major differences in between rugby and American football? I mean, obviously the rule set's different. As far as I guess the equipment is a lot different. Y'all don't really wear a lot of protective gears. Like obviously in America we wear shoulder pads, leg pads,
helmets,
helmets, stuff like that. So, like, what is the main difference? I guess what's the main difference physically between the American football and rugby?
Okay, American football, the guys are on and off the pitch all the time. So the defense go on, they get the ball back, the offense go on. So quite a lot at the time, and then you've got your special teams and one thing and another.
Right.
A lot of the time you're sat on the sidelines.
Mm-hmm.
So whereas rugby, you start the game, and if you're lucky, you'll get taken off sort of about 60 minutes later and watch the last 20 minutes of the game.
Wow.
Or if you're unlucky, you're playing the whole game. You're playing the full 80.
So a rugby match is 80 minutes long?
Yeah. So what they say over here is that rugby players spend 80 minutes running around pretending that they're not injured, whereas soccer players spend 90 minutes running around pretending that they are.
I'd agree with that, because it seems like soccer seems like they, well, I ain't even going to get into it. Most of them, they always acting like they're getting hurt. Which, I mean, granted, I've never played soccer, so I'm not going to sit here and bash them, because I know people that hear this that have played soccer, probably wouldn't be too happy about that.
They're too busy worrying about their hairstyle and whether they got enough gel on and don't mess my hair up, or if you brush past them, I've got to take a dive to see if I could get a penalty out.
Yeah. Well, I agree with that.
And there's too much money in it. That's the problem with soccer, I think.
I agree with that. I agree with that, and that's the same thing I feel like is with American football. I feel like it's the same thing with any sports league in America. There is way too much money in it, because you got like these college players and stuff. As far in America, they go to school full time, and then they're out there playing, all season and stuff, and they're making no money. No, they're not making anything at all. They're just doing it because that's the passion and love they have. But then you have these guys that are playing professional, that are making, $20 million, $30 million a year to play football, and I think it's just absolutely
crazy.
Yeah.
But we have the Premier League in rugby, and there's a cap on what the team can spend.
Mm-hmm.
I think, if I remember rightly, I think for the whole team, there's a cap of about £5 million, which is about something about $7.5 million for the team to run for the whole season.
Wow.
That's for the players, that's for the training staff, and the whole team. So there's a wage cap. So guys can't earn silly money, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Now let me ask you this. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead and finish what you're saying. Okay. Now, like, what's the difference between the rules, like the way the game is set up between American football and how you all play? Because I mean, I'll be honest with you straight out of the gate, I don't really know anything about rugby. I mean, I've seen a little bit of it, here and there, but as far as understanding how the game works, the rules of the game and stuff, I honestly don't really know anything about it.
Well, I guess American football, you can throw the ball forwards, and it's all about gaining territory that way. So,
right,
and as soon as the ball goes dead, it stops.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in rugby, the ball has to go backwards to be carried forward.
Okay.
So you can't pass the ball forwards. You can kick it forwards, but you can't throw it forwards. You have to throw the ball backwards.
Okay.
And you can pass it down the line. So it's a bit more of a technical game than American. Technical, is that the word? It's a more physical game than American football.
Right. Oh yeah, for
and
sure.
and anybody can tackle anybody who's got the ball, basically, and anybody can carry the ball. Whereas in American football, it's generally the running backs or um,
Receivers.
the receivers that get to touch
Time.
the ball and the
Yeah.
quarterback. Whereas everybody on on a rugby team can carry the ball, and you'll see it. Lots of games you'll see a lot of carrying of the ball and running into people getting tackled.
Hmm.
Um, and occasionally it'll go like skittle, ping pong, where you're kicking the ball backwards and forwards to get territory. And if the ball
Okay.
goes dead, then you've got to restart the game by throwing the ball in. If you drop the ball and it goes forward, then you have to have a scrum to restart the game. And a scrum is where
And
the
that's the position you played, right?
yeah. Well, I play the scrum half, which is the guy that directs most of the play. So you've got the 9 and the 10 that direct most of the play. So the 9 is the one that passes the ball out most of the time from whether it's a scrum or whether it's a ruck or whether it's a tackle. So you tackled, the tackler's got to roll away to get the scrum half a chance to get hold of the ball to put it out and to continue to play. And he passes it generally to the number 10, which is the fullback, which is the halfback, and then he distributes it. So the number 10 directs the backs, whereas the scrum half kind of directs the forwards.
Okay.
And the forwards are the guys that go into the scrum. And there's 8 guys going to the scrum. So you've got 1, 2, 3 on the front row, and they lock it heads with the 1, 2, 3 on the other side. Then you get the 4 and the 5 that are the locks, and they go between the front three, and then you get um, the back three, who then and then they get the call sort of down. What is it? Down, bind, and then set, and that's when it all lock together.
Hmm.
And when the ball's put in, that's when they can push. So it's worth sitting and watching a game of rugby. Once you get a rough idea of what the rules are,
Hmm.
and how it's played, it's a really exciting game to watch.
Okay. Now, as far as like, and we'll move on past this, but
Yeah.
as far as like the scoring goes, how does scoring, how is
Okay.
scoring different than I guess a regular American football?
Okay. American football, uh, a running back or a receiver just has to get the ball over over the whitewash at the end.
Yeah, to the end zone.
With rugby, anybody can carry the ball over, but they've got to ground the ball in the dead zone to be able to score, and that's called a try, and that's worth 5 points. And
Okay.
then the conversion happens where the ball goes across the line.
Hmm.
You come back and you kick it from there. So in American football, it's about 10 meters back from the goal, and they just straight over, don't they?
Yeah.
Well, in rugby, it's where it goes over, they bring it back, and then it's at an angle to go over. It could be right if you get it underneath the post, it's great because you can kick it straight through. But if it's off on the outside the 5 meter, which is inside 5 meters, then you've got an angle to kick it at. So, and that's worth 2 points. And then you get a penalty, and the penalty is worth 3 points. So
Oh,
if
okay.
you get infringement, and then you can kick for a penalty, and it has to go through the uprights, that's worth 3 points.
Wow.
Basically, that's the scoring in rugby.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Totally different than
Mm.
I guess you could say American football. Um, now,
Quite a big difference in the games.
oh yeah, for sure, for
Mm.
sure. Now, let me ask you this real quick. As far as like injuries and stuff, like health down the road after, I guess you'd say
Yeah.
rugby players retire or whatever. What's like what would you say, just I guess off the top of your head, the percentage of like concussions and stuff like that compared to American football?
That's quite a good question. Over the last few years, they've taken it a lot more serious about head injuries.
Mm-hmm.
And if a player gets a knock in a game nowadays, particularly the professional game, they're taken off for a head injury assessment.
Right.
And it's down to the doctor then to decide whether he can go back on.
Yeah.
And he's off for a minimum of 10 minutes. What they
wow.
do, that's a minimum of 10 minutes. It might take a bit longer to do that head injury assessment.
Mm-hmm.
And if the doctor says no, then he ain't going back on. And then he's then got a week or two to sort of recover from that injury, and he's assessed all the time for it.
Right. Yeah. So I guess relatively similar to American football. It's kind of the same way. If a quarterback or a player gets hit, really hard, and they're trying to get up and they can tell that they've been hit in the head. They obviously will take them to the medical tent. And the doctor check them out. And, sometimes you see them come back on, but most of the time, if it's a solid hit and they've hit their head, very, very hard, most of the time they don't, ever come back in. Well, they won't come back in the rest of the game,
Yeah, exactly the same with rugby. They're taking this really, really serious nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I guess as far as the NFL, they've done the same thing. Stepping their game up as far as, as back like in the mid 80s to early 90s, they wasn't nowhere near as serious about it. Yeah. But now I feel like in the more early, I guess you could say more mid 2000s till now, they've took a lot of the concussions and stuff a lot more serious because, players from back in the 80s and stuff, they end up having a lot of brain damage and stuff. And I feel like, they was like, we better take this stuff a lot more serious. But we'll move on past the rugby. I knew that you was a rugby player, and I wanted to just get a little insight about that. And
it's a great game.
Yeah, it sounds like like I said, I've never really gotten into it just because I didn't really understand the rule set and stuff. But yeah, from the way
there's a World Cup coming next year, and America have a team.
Oh, really?
And I think it's in France next year, the Rugby World Cup.
Oh, wow. Yeah, see, I didn't even know that.
Yeah,
okay, so let me ask you this. Going back to your military career, what really kind of, sparked something in you, or I guess you could say inspired something in you to want to join the military?
Oh, that's a good question. Right. Up until the age of 11, I was going to be a farmer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I wanted to follow my granddad's footsteps. Now, there was a couple of things that happened around that time. In England at that time, when you were sort of 10 and a half, but around about 10, 11, you go and take an exam, and it's called the 11 plus. And this dictates what type of school you can go to. So if you pass the 11 plus, you can go to a grammar school, which is really good education. If you don't pass it, then you go to a secondary school or a comprehensive school where they maybe not so academic. I mean, you've got a different range of kids. And I ended up in the lowest class to the low because I failed 11 plus pretty miserably. To be honest, I mean, at the time we didn't know, but I suffer from dyslexia, so I struggled quite a bit going through school.
Mm-hmm.
When I did go, then so having failed that fairly miserably, I was looking at going to an agricultural boarding school over in a place called Much Haddam, Haddam Hall. And so my parents took me over to this school, and I took an entrance test to go to this. It was an agricultural boarding school, so you do your normal studies, but you also, on top of that, you learn all about farming. I failed that miserably as well. So at the age of sort of 10 and a half, my life sort of was turned upside down, and I was no longer going to be a farmer. Um, so I decided that, well, so that I'll go and join the army instead.
Mm-hmm.
So at the age of 11, I was too young to go and join the army cadets, but I could join the sea cadets. So we in England we have army cadets, sea cadets, and um, air cadets, and these are all sponsored by the military. They're youth, basically youth clubs with a military sponsor, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just a little bit too young to join the army cadets, so I joined the sea cadets first, and I did about 18 months, nearly 2 years as a sea cadet, and that's where I got a love for sailing and all things messing about on water.
Right. Right.
And then when I was at the right age, so I was 13, I managed to go and join the army cadets. So
Mm-hmm.
I left the sea cadets and went to the army cadets. And at the age of 14 and three quarters, you could go and apply to join the army. So I went over to the recruiting office to take the entrance test to see whether I could join the army or not. And funny old thing, I failed that miserably as well.
Oh
At this time,
wow.
I was playing hooky from school quite a lot. I mean, when you go into school, get registered,
Mm-hmm.
and then when you're going off to your first lesson, you do a bunk. So I didn't spend an awful lot of time going to school. I spent a lot of time mucking about with a couple of mates. So this recruiting sergeant, he says to me, son, if you can't read and write proper, you can't join the army. And that's the bottom line. He says, you need to go and sort yourself out. So anyway, that weekend, I took a long, hard look at myself and
Mm-hmm.
thinking, what are you doing, you muppet? Because I was probably on a slippery slope. I could have ended up going to jail instead.
Right.
And I didn't really want that. I was hanging around with some pretty rough types, which,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, weren't doing me any good. So that following Monday morning, I went into school, and instead of doing a bunk after registration, I went to all the classes that day and the rest of the week. Half of the teachers thought I was a new boy because I'd
Yeah.
never been in their class,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Never showed up.
yeah. So for the next 8 months, I worked my nuts off. I really tried it, really really hard, um, and then I went back with a mate um, to go and take the test again,
Mm-hmm.
and a combination of me doing the test and my mate giving me some of the answers, I managed to bag a place to join the army,
Wow.
and
Wow.
didn't look back really.
Right. Now, let me ask you this. You said you joined the Army Cadets at 16.
No, no,
Now,
I joined the army cadets at sort of 12 and a half, 13. I joined the army proper when I was 16.
oh, okay. My bad. Sorry. I didn't mean to mess that
Yeah,
up. Um, but to what I was saying, can you still do that today? Join the
yeah,
Army at 16?
yeah. We
Really?
still have the Army Apprentice College at Harrogate. So they take youngsters in at sort of 16, and they do a 42-week course up at Harrogate. And it's the Army, what do they call it? It's an apprentice college basically, and it's training up leaders for tomorrow. So you find that guys that have come through the junior soldiers, they are junior leaders. So they're teaching these guys to be leaders when they join, when they go to the regiments.
Mhm.
So
Wow.
that all starts off at 16. Do they pass out at 17, and then they go on to their trade training from there. So they do this long course, and it's all lots of it's academic, lots of it's all military training, lots of it's adventurous training.
Mhm.
So they're giving these guys lots of training to give them the tools to be able to become leaders eventually.
Wow. Now, how long have you been out of the military?
It will be 4 years.
4 years.
4 years on the 4th of April. I retired on the 4th of April, 2018.
4th of April, 2018. Wow. So you got a 4 year anniversary coming up pretty soon, then, don't you?
I have. I'm going to
Yeah.
be when I'm 64.
uh, now, let me ask you this: how different is the UK's army from the American army? Because I'm sure you've been around quite a few American soldiers, right?
Yep.
So now, what
Um,
would you say, just from your perspective, how different your all's military is from the U.S.'s military?
okay. From my experience, working, this is where I've worked with Americans on a few occasions, was when I was in PSYOPs.
Hmm.
As a UK PSYOPs operator at my level, I can multitask. I can I can go into the planning cycle of a campaign. So I can plan a campaign. I can do the target audience analysis, looking at the target audiences that we're trying to influence.
Hmm.
I can do the product development. I can do the product production. I can do the product dissemination, and I can do the product evaluation measures of effect. So I've got a full set, skill set where I can go into uh, an operation, and I can be the sole PSYOPs operator advising a commander on what we can do for his mission.
Right. Okay.
My experiences of American PSYOPs operators, they do one task. They either do the target analysis, or they're a printer, or they're a designer. They don't tend to cross-platform multitask, and that I think is a big difference that I've seen um, from our armies. We train to do everybody else's job,
And
if
not
that
just
makes
one
some sense.
job.
Not just one job. No, we're multi-skilled, multitasks. So
Okay.
we learn to do everything. Whereas Americans all concentrate on one task, if that makes sense.
Yeah. 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 No, I understand exactly what you're saying.
Mm,
Well, yeah, that I mean that makes a lot of sense. And honestly, I never really would even knew that if I asked you that question.
mm.
So you were roughly in the army for what, 50,
44 years,
44 years?
man,
Okay.
boy, regular and reserve under the colours.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
And so, because I
Now,
was an infantry soldier, um, I was in the Royal Anglian Regiment, which was made up of 9 county regiments of the east of England. So our first battalion was made up of the Norfolk, Suffolk CAMs. Our second battalion was made up of Lincolnshire, Leicestershire, and Northamptonshire. And our third battalion was made up of the Beds, Herts, and Essex. So they were all amalgamated into what was the East Anglian Regiment in 1958,
mhm.
and in 1964 we got a royal warrant from the Queen, and we became the Royal Anglian Regiment. And to this day, we still look after our predecessors. We have a regimental gathering every year where we bring the whole regiment together, and we celebrate and have a drumhead service for all our fallen comrades of our regiment and the previous regiments.
Right.
So we're a big family regiment, and just a couple of weeks ago, across the country, we held, I think it was about 40 odd big breakfasts where the regiment paid for a breakfast for all the veterans that turned up to the different events. And I held an event down here, and we had 7 guys that live locally all joined me for a big breakfast paid for by the regiment.
Wow. Wow, that's fantastic. That really is. That's nice.
Mm.
And there's actually an important question, not important question I was going to ask, but now it kind of slipped my mind. Oh yeah, I know what I was going to ask you. So now, have you traveled a lot, like overseas? Have you been to like several different parts of the world, or was you just mainly based in one area, or what?
No. When I came out of training in 1975, my first posting was to Munster in Germany.
Okay.
So, so we did I did the last year and a half of the battalion in Munster,
Hmm.
and then the battalion was posted back to England, and we were posted in the east of England in a place called Kent. And that 2 year posting that we were there, we actually only spent about 6 months, if you put it all together, actually in Gillingham. We were always off on exercise somewhere. We went to Norway, we went to Denmark, we went to Gibraltar, we went to Gambia, we went to Italy. I had a great
Wow.
time doing an exchange tour with the Italians. They stuck us in the mountains with the Alpini troops,
Hmm.
and we spent a couple of weeks chasing these guys up and down mountains around the Dolomites.
Oh
Um,
man.
uh, um, and it's funny because they have, because they're up in the mountains, they have a different sort of breakfast. I
Hmm.
mean, they have this sort of porridgey stuff for breakfast and a sachet of brandy, and then lunchtime you'll get some pasta or something, or no, bread and cheese or something for lunch,
Hmm.
and a small bottle of wine, and then in the evening you get a load of big pasta dish in that, and some more wine. So us being British soldiers, we tend to take liberties with our hosts.
Yeah.
Generosity with the wine.
Oh yeah, I guarantee it. I guarantee it.
So
Now, and probably traveling at like as much as you did all over the world. What was probably one of your least favorite countries that you were in, as far as
Iraq.
like that? Really?
I'll say that straight off. Iraq.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Why?
yeah, I didn't enjoy Iraq at all. Really,
Hmm.
it was. I was there on in 2004, or back in no, it was 2003. It was after the invasion and all the rest of it. I came up on the what we call Telic 2, and I crossed over from Telic 2 to Telic 3.
Hmm.
The task that I had was a thankless task. It really was um, a proper thankless task. My remit was to come up with a campaign to enhance the perception of the Iraqi police service in the eyes of the Iraqi people. Imagine that.
Yeah. Wow. That's what I was
The
about to
Iraqi
say.
police service had been mistrusted for decades.
Hmm.
They were corrupt, they were brutal, and my task was to come up with a campaign to change the attitude and the behaviour of the Iraqi people towards the Iraqi police service.
Oh wow. Yeah, man, that's boy, that's I don't think that's a job anybody would want to
No,
try
it's
to pretty much try to turn an entire country to look different
yeah,
on their police force and stuff when just like you said for decades
yeah,
they've hated them and looked at them
yeah,
as cruels being crooked and criminals stuff
yeah.
like that to try to I mean that's what you're saying to try to persuade pretty much an
It,
entire country to look at them differently. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, we operate in the south of the country from Basra up to Asanwa, which
Hmm.
is about three quarters of the way to Baghdad. So I work with the Brits in Basra
Hmm.
and Alamara, which is out to the east on the Euphrates, and then I work with the Italians up at Nasiriyah. And I actually that was the one bit I did enjoy. I did enjoy going up to the Italians at Nasiriyah, and I always timed it so we'd have to stop overnight, and we was always there for either lunch or dinner. And then we went a bit further up to a place called Asanwa, where the Dutch were operating.
Hmm.
Um, and the Dutch, funny enough, the Dutch had a really challenge on their hands. They had to come up with a bit of a campaign because they were getting Japanese soldiers coming in. First time the Japanese army had been operated outside Japan since the Second World War.
Oh wow.
So, yeah, I mean, wow, you say wow. The problem that they had was that they couldn't afford to have a Japanese soldier injured on this operation.
Hmm. Yeah.
Fortunately, they were up in it was a bit of a benign area,
Hmm.
a sandbar. It was sort of between sort of the south and Baghdad. It was a fairly quiet area, fairly sparsely populated area, but the Japanese had a task to go in there, and they were doing. They were going to build I think some infrastructure and a school, and the Dutch job was to make sure that they had the security to be able to do that task without um, without incident. So that was quite a challenge. And again, working with the Dutch and the Iraqi police service in the area. I mean, the guy, the chief of police in Samuel wasn't too bad. He wasn't the worst that we've come across.
Hmm.
So, mm. So that was interesting.
Oh yeah, I
But
mean that definitely. Well, that sounds like a challenge and a half right there.
yeah,
Now,
and
as go ahead, sorry.
yeah, as it turned out, I was there. I was supposed to be there for 6 months,
Hmm.
and I've been there for about 4 months, and I mean, trying to get this campaign together. I got a message to go to see the Padre. I thought, funny, don't normally get get summoned by the vicar.
Yeah.
So I went to see the Padre, and he sat me down and gave me a cup of tea. He said, "I've got some bad news for you." He said, "We've had a message from the JCCC, which is the Joint Casualty and Compassionate Cell,
Hmm.
to say that your wife has just been diagnosed with cancer, and she starts her treatment on the Monday, and you're going home."
Wow.
That was the worst 48 hours of my life.
Oh, I guarantee it,
He
without a
said,
doubt.
I went and packed my kit, and they flew me back. I mean, the treatment I got was second to none. It was first class,
Hmm.
straight out the top drawer. I mean, I was picked up, I was taken, and yeah, was pretty tough. And then she got over that. I mean, we went through all that treatment and everything like that. I mean, it's horrible. I mean, lost her hair and
Hmm.
all sorts of problems we had. But
Right.
she got through that. And then I was due to go to Afghanistan the following year. And in the November of 2005, my best friend took his life.
Mm.
And
Wow.
a year later, my wife lost her battle against cancer for a second time. It was a pretty shit time of my life,
Yeah.
but I got through it, and here I am today. And I deployed out again to Afghanistan. I did 2 further tours after
Wow.
that.
Wow. Well, I'm sorry, to hear about, your wife and your best friend. I can't even
Yeah,
imagine something like that.
it, it takes a bit of getting over.
Oh, for
That's for
sure.
sure.
For sure.
But I mean, life move on.
Hmm.
We're all in. We've all got that same ticket. We've all gonna die one day.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the truth. We all got a date and time. That's for
Yep.
sure. That's for sure. It's just like sometimes,
Just give us half a second.
all right.
Get out. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's all right. No
The
problem.
ship's cat wanted to go out.
uh, but yeah, what was I saying? Yeah, it just seems like sometimes, just like you said, we all do have uh,
Yeah.
a day and time, but it just sometimes makes you wonder why some of the people that are closest to us, why their day ends up coming
Yeah.
rather sooner than later.
Yeah.
Does make you wonder that. Now, as far as I ask you, what's the your least favorite place? Now, what's probably one of the most favorite places that you went when you was in the military, as far as countries and stuff?
Afghanistan.
Really?
Afghanistan, without a doubt. Yeah.
Wow. And now, why is
I
that?
I did 3 tours of Afghan. I was in Kabul in 2002. In fact, I was I was in Macedonia when 9/11 happened.
Oh,
And
wow.
the funny part about it, I was sat outside of Camp Able Sentry
Hmm.
with a couple of guys that gone in to go to the PX to do some shopping, and I was listening to the radio, and it came over that there was a plane had gone into one of the twin towers. I thought that doesn't sound clever, so I've gone and grabbed the guys. We shot back to our ops room where we got a big TV up on the screen, up on the wall, and we saw the second plane go into the twin towers.
Wow.
And yeah, the Americans that were working with us at the time, I mean, what they were saying, thankfully it didn't come to fruition, but they wanted to go and nuke the rest of the world.
Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure.
Anyway, uh, 5 months later, I found myself in Kabul.
Wow.
Uh,
Wow. So
but
so Afghanistan was pretty good.
yeah, I really enjoyed my time in Afghan. The people, everything, because I was in PSYOPs at the time, everything we do is directed at the local population. So they're our target audience.
Right.
Because my Pashto's not fantastic,
Hmm.
I had to work with interpreters, and so I work with interpreters all the time, and always speaking to locals. And I had a really good time there. Say, the the 2 tours I did in Helmand was all about working with rehabs, radio in a box.
Hmm.
So it's like a commercial radio, uh, an FM transmitter, media, a mixing desk on it, a couple of video players, and you put a laptop on and you produce a radio program and you send it out to the locals. You broadcast to the locals.
Wow.
Don't get me wrong, I nearly lost my life a few times there as well. I
Really?
mean, I've got in a few scrapes, but
That seems like
somebody's
you.
looking after me.
Yeah. Seems like you made it out all right though, didn't you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
a
Good
lot
deal.
a lot of guys didn't make it out quite quite so
Right.
well,
Right.
but
Right. So now
but
that you're out of the military and
yep.
I guess to say retired, so what do you do now?
Well, I retired on the 4th of April 2018. Our first thing that we did, we took our yacht and we sailed from Gosport, and we sailed along the south coast, up the Dutch coast, Belgium Dutch coast, up into Germany, up through the Kiel Canal, and into Denmark and Sweden, and we sailed around there for a couple of months, and then we sailed all the way back down again in 2018.
Wow.
Had a lovely time, me and the missus.
Oh, I guarantee it.
And then we got back in the October from that trip. So we left sort of in April and got back in October and had a great time. Loved sailing up there. The real Billy bonus about sailing in the Baltic is that you don't have to worry about tides.
Yeah.
When you're sailing around the south coast of England, you need to have an eye on what the tides are doing, because you don't want to be going against tides. They do flow quite rapid around here.
Yeah. Now, what kind of yacht did you have when you were sailing?
It was a Swedish-built Hellberg Rassy 36 Mark II. So it's 36 foot long, 37 foot long. It was a Category A boat, ocean boat for 9. Where you put 9 people on it, I don't know. With 2 ton of kit. Don't know where you put 2 ton of kit, but I mean we had quite a lot of stuff on there, but it was just the 2 of us at that stage.
Wow.
So that was that trip. Mm-hmm. And then in 2019, what did we do in 2019? We did a few trips across the Channel to northern France, and we went down to the Isles of Scilly.
Oh wow!
Had a fantastic, loved the Isles of Scilly. And they do say it's the Caribbean of the British Isles. Mm-hmm. So it's some really lovely places down there, and we were anchoring everywhere, so it was great. And then in 2020, after we came out the first lockdown, mm-hmm. we made an error, but not, if that makes sense. They unlocked us in July, mm-hmm. early July. So we sailed down to the Scillies as soon as we could get. We went. We were down the Scillies. We spent a couple of weeks down there, and we decided that why don't we tick a bucket list? So we decided we're going to sail around the UK. So that's what we did. We left the Scillies, and the forecast was supposed to be quite good. And the bit from the bottom or the top of the Scillies to the bottom of Southern Ireland, there's quite a big gap where the Atlantic comes in. And about 8 hours after leaving the Scillies, the weather changed, wasn't forecast the way they said it was, and we started getting a big swell coming in, and we were going into the night, and come the following morning, we're sort of 100 odd miles from the Scillies, and there's some massive waves coming in. I mean,
oh wow,
5-6 meter high waves. I mean, they were huge, and they were big Atlantic rollers. Mm-hmm. And we saw coming on the top of them, and obviously you could see for miles. The next minute, you're down in the trough, you can't see at all.
Oh my gosh!
But
I would say that was I'd say that was definitely scary, wasn't it?
Well, we're kind of used to it. By this time, we've got a cat as well, so we've got a ship's cat on board. And
I'd say that was fun.
We were going into the third night, and mm-hmm. we hadn't had much sleep at all because it was quite lumpy and rough. So at that time, Ireland was still closed, but due to the COVID. But we managed to sneak into Arklow, which is halfway up the east coast of Ireland, and so we snuck in there, went alongside for the night. We weren't allowed to get off the boat, but we had to leave the following morning. So we left the following morning, and then we went into Northern Ireland, which was open, and then from there we went across into the Western Isles of Scotland, played around there for a bit. Then we went up through the Caledonian Canal across Scotland. Loch Ness, must have heard of Loch Ness and the monster.
Yes. Yep. Oh yeah. I've
Well,
heard of that.
well, we got into Loch Ness, and the wind was coming straight down on our nose. So we did 30 tacks up up Loch Ness, all under sail.
Wow.
And all those tacks, we didn't see Nessie at all. And then we had the best part of a week in Inverness, where we were waiting for a weather window to be able to come south again. And we decided, because it's getting late on in August, and September the weather starts turning nasty up there, and we had a bit of a blow and some horrible weather. So this weather window came where we was going to get a nice westerly that was going to take us all the way back down, and we set off on the afternoon, and we set sail, and we were going into the third night. We were down off the coast of Scarborough on the east coast of England, and the wind had died off quite a bit, so we needed, because it had been overcast and a bit rainy during the day, we put the engine on to put a bit more charge into the batteries. It was about 9:30 at night. Boom, we picked up a line of lobster pots and stopped us dead, and we were going nowhere, absolutely nowhere. So I called into the Coast Guard and said, look, we've got a bit of a problem. We're just off the shipping lane. We've picked up a line of lobster pots, and we're going to try and cut them free. They said, well, we'll send out a lifeboat, and they got lights on and one thing and another. So they sent the lifeboat out. So we've all got our life jackets on, including the ship's cat. So the lifeboat come alongside, it dropped a guy on high on pull, and I'll take two sugars. So he spied the cat, and the cat's got his life jacket on. And anyway, the next thing we know, it's taken several hours to cut us free, and time we actually get going again, we've lost the weather window that we were on to get us all the way home. We were going to do 630 miles from Inverness back to Gosport, because there's not too many places that we could get in on the east coast. So we ended up going into a place called Grimsby, and the next thing we know, we've been met by another lifeboat when we got into Grimsby, and then we got a phone call from the Royal National Lifeboat Institution saying, could we do a story about the ship's cat?
Wow.
So,
how about that?
So now the ship's cat is quite famous.
Oh,
and in this year's Royal National Lifeboat Institute yearbook, he's got a 14-page story about Artie the ship's cat and his rescue.
How about that? Wow.
And the funny part about it, he slept through most of it.
So he's got it made, is what you're saying.
Yeah. He's a famous cat.
There you go. Well, I think that might just about wrap us up, man. You had some great stories. I mean, it sounds like altogether you've had a very fun-filled life. I mean, I'm sure there's, obviously there's parts of it that hasn't always been fun, but you've definitely got to.
We all go through that.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think everybody, doesn't matter. I guess it doesn't matter how much money you got, how much traveling you've been able to do. Not every bit of your life is going to be sailing high. There's going to be times, you hit rock bottom at some point. But just like just like you said, you get up and you push past it, you move on.
Yeah. So we're all guaranteed, got one guarantee in life, and that's we're all going to die one day. Mm-hmm. Not everybody pays their taxes.
That's
everybody's going to die.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Everybody,
you can't guarantee paying tax, but you can guarantee dying.
Yes. Yes. Not everybody's going to pay the taxes, but everybody's going to die like that. I like that.
Yeah, and it's all about accepting the fact that people die.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, there's a grieving process to go through, but it's just the way that you deal with it.
Oh, it
Accept
is.
the
It
fact.
is.
Yeah.
It is. It is. Well, Tim, I couldn't thank you enough for being on my show today. I greatly appreciate you taking the time out of your day and out of your busy schedule to fit me in for a little small podcast like mine. But I greatly
It's been
appreciate
an
it.
absolute pleasure.
Yes, sir. I've enjoyed it. I really have. I've enjoyed all the stories, and I know I haven't done a lot of talking, but you're obviously the featured guest, and I just wanted to listen to you and just listen to your stories and everything. And
Yeah.
like I said, I greatly appreciate you coming on the show.
Well, as a host myself, the way I look at it is that I've got two of these and one of these,
Hmm.
and use them in that proportion.
Yep, that's exactly
You
right.
won't go far wrong as a
That's
host.
exactly right. Well, before I let you go, if you want to go ahead and tell everybody where they can listen to your podcast at and where they can follow you and keep up with you, go right ahead.
Well, my podcast is the Tim Heale podcast, Ordinary People's Extraordinary Stories. It's on all the normal podcast platforms. So it's on Amazon, Apple, Spotify. You can find it on all the lot. And you can also find a lot of my stuff nowadays on YouTube. So again, if you put in a search for the Tim Hill podcast or Ordinary People's Extraordinary Stories, you'll see what I've done on YouTube. And there's a lot of other stuff on there from previous years. There's some of my sailing stuff on there, and there's a lot of my where my guests dried up a bit and I had to improvise. I put a lot of Thirsty Thursday rants. So I've gone on and talked about a load of stuff of what's going on in the world. And I also have a live stream that goes out on a Thursday evening from 7 o'clock until 9 o'clock Greenwich Mean Time. And I guess it'll be British summertime fairly soon in the next week. Um, so if you're bored and you're trying to get to sleep, put on one of my podcasts. Might send you to sleep, might keep you awake. I can't guarantee it.
There we go. There we go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you heard him, Tim Heale. Once again, thank you very much for taking the time out. Until next time, peace out, everybody.